While I was rebuilding consoles for this video, Benson was being his absolute cuddliest. It feels like corporate America has been pushing into retro gaming for forever, and I'll be honest, I'm buying into it. With so many titles available from my childhood that I can play, why wouldn't I buy into it? It's plain nostalgia. But there are some things that are missing from some of the retro titles. For instance, the Nintendo Zapper, a very popular accessory for the game Duck Hunt. It's nostalgia like this, which is why a lot of people are pushing into buying the old CRTs so they can relive their childhood or experience it for the first time the way it was meant to be experienced. But a lot of these old consoles are starting to show their age, just like their original owners. This console is actually a really good example of that. My friend got this one as a Christmas gift in the very late 80s, and I suspect it has quite a few problems, including the blinking red light of death. You can get the game to run, but all you need is a little tap, and that right there is the real nostalgia of retro gaming. Not touching the console until you've saved your game. This doorless wonder is my personal console. I bought it at Swamp Meet 15 years ago, and it's been abused any way you can think of. A few years ago, I brought it to a friend who owns a shop, and he rebuilt it for me. Now I can abuse it any way I can think of even more. And it takes a lot more to stop the game. My plan for my friend's console is to get it working about as good as this one, without breaking the door off, of course. Now I went ahead and ordered the 72-pin connector I'm going to need to stick inside this machine, and it's going to show up today. It's really good that Amazon carries this part. Now let's rip into a piece of history. The things to keep in mind about this console when I'm repairing it is that I don't want to be entirely destructive to this thing, but I definitely want to get it diagnosed and I want to get it fixed, so that way my friend can enjoy it some more. We're going to rip off that old 72-pin connector that barely makes contact with the cartridges anymore. Look at that thing, all original and clean, but it doesn't work. We're going to replace it. My friend also says he's having power issues with the console. We're going to take a look at that. The board looks okay. It looks like everything's making a good connection, good solid solder joint. It's more than likely his power brick is having issues, so I'm going to find one in my bin. One of the mods my friend made on my console was bypassing the lockout chip. It fixes a lot of issues with that blinking red light. I'm about to do it on my friend's console, but then I remember, do I want to be destructive to this thing? My friend is sharing this with his kids, and I remembered what I felt like when I was a kid. What if I was playing one of those Lawsuit Tengen games, and then my Nintendo overheated? How would I feel? I back off the modification. I'm going to go ahead and wait and see if I have any other problems with this console before I decide a destructive mod like that. The part finally shows up, and the good part is that it comes with this handy tool that allows me to break into cartridges. I hear you can also use this tool to break into the Nintendo 64 and its cartridges, as well as the cartridges from the SNES. And here it is, the 72-pin connector for the NES. Let's get this bad boy on. Now I'm about to break a cardinal rule of my own where I'm going to go ahead and reassemble the whole thing before I plug it in and try it out. This is usually a mistake because sometimes when you're putting things together, you make mistakes, and it's better to not have to take the whole thing apart again. But that's okay. We're just going to go ahead and watch me go through it and see what happens. Well, that's a good sign. And I can move the cartridge around and it doesn't freeze. That is always a good thing. So far, my fix is working. I do run into trouble with the Player 1 port. It looks like I plugged it into the wrong port on the board. I have to fix that later. I have never seen this happen when I hit the pause button before. This is baffling. What's going on here? Back to the drawing board. I pulled the system back apart and I swift around the inputs, and I also checked the wires to make sure there's no breaks, because that would be bad. I go back into the game and start button gets me into the game, and then I hit start while I'm in game and the pause glitch happens again. I try another game, start button, and it's fine. So what's going on here? Sure enough, on my console, I get the same result. It's the cartridge. Every other game I plug into the system works fine. I'm getting tons of good gameplay, all the buttons work great, but there's a ton of cartridges that aren't reading on that system. So I have to make that hard decision to go back inside that console and rip out that pin. This was obviously the fix, because even now, cartridges that sat in the rain are working in this system. I'm playing every game, me and Benson both, and everything's working fine. The culprit was the blinking red light of death after all. Oh look, there's Layla. I pull out my Game Genie even, and get that working inside the console. I hate using destructive fixes on systems like this, but you know what? A fix is a fix. I did end up with some cartridges that just aren't working at all, and I'm going to have to probably save that for another video, because it would be nice to have my Zelda 2 and my Blades of Steel running. I don't know if my friend is the type to play bootleg games, but now if he wants to, he can. And it's good to know that this system's going to be out there for a few more years, keeping his kids happy. And him probably too. The lesson I learned this time around is never put your system all the way back together until you know it works. Join me next time when we either find out if we can get these cartridges running again, or I get back to fixing Xbox consoles. See you next time.